Good.
Welcome, everybody. My name is Zibru Selker. I'm the co-chair for the Women in Architecture on Long Island, also the associate director for the New York State. Our Latinas in Architecture, Stories of Raising the 1%, One Latina at a Time. Thank you so much for everybody joining today and for your support. I see a lot of familiar faces and we really appreciate it. So we have 4 panelists, our beautiful ladies. We have Raquel, Giselle, Alicia, and Graciela. And we're gonna start with a couple of questions and see where everything leads, very natural. And at the end of our discussion, we will have questions. So our current person that will be introducing themselves is Raquel. So if you can tell us a little bit about yourself and how, you're here and.
Thank you. Well, first of all, thank you so much to the AIA chapter in Long Island. It's very awesome to be here with these amazing women. And thank you, Graciela, for connecting us with everyone. Renee, this is awesome. I am going to share some slides real quick. We're going to talk a little bit about ourselves. And I thought to not talk about me necessarily as an architect, because you will know that through what we talk today, but a little bit about myself and why I am the way I am, or where I was born. So my name is Raquel Guzman. I'm going to tell you a little bit about me. I was born in the Dominican Republic, which is an island in the Caribbean. I share with so many other beautiful islands, specifically born in Santo Domingo, which is the capital city of Dominican Republic or República Dominicana. If you haven't been there, it is a beautiful island. I would suggest for everyone to go. It's very peaceful and the people are very happy all the time, at least from my experience. But it's not only beaches, we have a lot of adventure. Growing up, I could never stop moving. I'm always in the go, and that's a big part of my personality. And my parents always let me do that. And we also have mountains, which people don't necessarily know that an island can have all these amazing mountains. So it was very cool growing up with nature and all these things around me, and food. I love eating, as probably many of you, and we have such amazing food that if any of you here from Puerto Rico, the Caribbean, anywhere else too, you probably love or know a lot of these foods, and we're very proud of our culture. As you can see here, I carry my flag everywhere. Chicago on the top, that's where I'm joining here today. That was in France in the bottom. Anywhere I go, I'm very proud to be a Dominican, and I carry that torch. Like, everyone knows it, and I think it's important for everyone to know where you're from. And then myself is not only where I grew up, but it's my family and my heritage. As we know, Latin America is a beautiful, diverse, right, whole continents, right, with people that are coming from all around the world. All of us have very different histories. My grandparents were born in 3 different countries. All of my mom's family is from Lebanon, and my dad's family comes from Italy and Spain. So I didn't only grow up, with all the Dominican culture, but everything that they tried to teach me as I was growing up. Never was able to learn Lebanese, try to learn a little bit of Italian, but these are my parents, beautiful parents. They taught me almost everything I know. I could say they are the 2 most influential people in my life, and my brother as well. He's one of the hardest working people I know. And the food, again, going back to food, this is Lebanese food, Italian food, grew up with a lot of it, and that has influenced even the places I moved to in the US in the end, because I wanted it to be where I could get all these things no matter where I was. And my family is not only my 4 parents, as a lot of Latinos know, it's like 56 of us, and they're always with me. Right now, I have 16 people of my family here in Chicago. I'm gonna go meet after this call. I'm very excited to do so, but we're always trying to be together, travel together and all that. So as you can see, family was one of the biggest things in my life. Another thing was my parents told me you have to educate your mind, right? You're going to college no matter what. And that was the thing I always knew. And I also knew I wanted to go to college in the United States. It was not going to be an easy feat, but my parents told me, well, if you work hard and you get your scholarships, and that's what I did. I went to Spanish high school, but I would always keep watching TV and shows to make sure my English was not rusty when I came to the States. Granted, the English you learn in the shows is not the best English in the world, but it helped. And I applied to tons of schools where I was going to do business. Why? Because that's what I grew up watching. If you come from the Dominican Republic, business, law, medicine are like 3 of those careers that's what you have to study. And then eventually, after getting accepted into all these schools for business, I told my parents, like, I love architecture, or I love design, and I want to do it. So they were like, follow your passion. We just want you to be happy. So I ended up applying into Savannah College of Art and Design, which is in Savannah, Georgia, where I did my undergrad and my master's career in architecture. I met tons of beautiful people from all over the world. It was one of the best experiences. It's an experience that you don't really get if you stay back home, because they don't have the dorms and all those things. So it just changed my life, and it changed who I am. I actually started learning more about myself when I left home. And I know a lot of you might relate with that. You leave home and that's where you discover who you are for your own. I did my thesis. It was all about happiness. This is a big thing in my life. I always try to seek happiness. So anything about happiness and smiling, just let me know, and I'm there. And then I graduated school. So when I graduated school, that was a hard time in my life, because being from the Dominican Republic, I'm not a citizen. So I had about 2 to 3 months to get a job. Came to Chicago for an AIA convention. Actually did not go to the convention, sorry, and met some people at a park that ended up working at the place I work on right now, which is where I started my journey as an adult. I did not realize how many things being an adult meant. It's great and it's hard, but it's made me again who I am. So I ended up at Smith Group, where I've been here for 7.5 years now. I'm an architect. I dabble between higher education, workplace, and science and tech. I've never necessarily stuck to one studio, because that's not who I am. As you can see, I love a lot of things, and they empowered me to do so. I felt very lucky to be here, because what can I say? It's the people that I surrounded myself with helped me become who I am. They empowered me from day one. What do you want to do? What do you want to keep doing? And that was very important for me. I was not pigeonholed or stuck in a place. A couple of this is some of the work, but like I said, I'm all about the people. You might be doing the best work in the world. If you're not with people that are encouraging you, promoting you, and being there for you, then you're in the wrong place. So a bunch of these people here are some of my best friends today. They all work with me. They've been here since the beginning as well. And it's just become a big family for me. So I'm very grateful for that. I'm in my process of getting my green card now and all those things. So hopefully that all works out. And then from Smith Group, I've always been very involved. So I call it work outside of work. For the first 3 years of my life in Chicago, I only did things for my office, which was great. JEDI committee, the social committee, emerging professionals. I always wanted to get involved. But then one day someone told me, like, hey, you're putting all your eggs in one basket. You're helping a lot of people, but you could be doing more outside of work and in the community. I started to open my heart and myself more to other people. I started joining and helping with AIA mentoring in schools. I'm very big proponent of mentoring from day one. So started doing that. I recently became the YAF co-chair for Chicago. And about maybe 1.5 years, 2 years ago, I got a phone call from Alicia, who's in this call somewhere, and she's one of our panelists. She told me, hey, I've been wanting to do this. Do you want to help me? And from that day, Architina was born with a lot of other amazing women that have joined, and it's been a big blessing. I will say I didn't know that many Latinas in architecture prior to that, and now I know at least 60, not even counting. And of course, I do other things outside of work. Don't have to talk about them all, but I do love traveling and cooking and meeting people, so I'm very excited to meet you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Raquel. That was amazing. Our second panelist is Giselle.
I'm gonna apologize because we did not coordinate this. My deck looks almost exactly like your deck. So you're just gonna hear, strangely enough, the same story. This is kind of bonkers, and you sound so much like home that I'm actually struggling with my English right now because I want to talk in Spanish and just like talk to you. This is fun. Oh my gosh. Definitely I've presented with Latinas, but this is weird. I don't even know what to say. So thank you for what just happened. I'm gonna struggle.
I call you my island girls.
Oh my gosh. Look, this is crazy. The island right next to Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico, that's home. Grew up there. My entire life, I definitely still call it home. Most of my family's still there. Basically only my brother who's in San Diego, and I am here in DC. I'm still, oh my gosh, I'm gonna struggle through this. That was awesome. The things that I love about home, as you can see here, that's at the end on the right side of the screen. That's the La Alcaldesa, the mayor's house or the governor's house. And they did this beautiful installation of these beautiful umbrellas, which just happened around the world. But it became sort of this symbol of connectedness, and it's part of how you view what's happening in Puerto Rico. And it happened right after Hurricane Maria. So I always acknowledge that for me, this is still home. In the worst times and in the best times, it will always be home. But I am in DC. I was born in 1979, don't count. And I love, much like Raquel, I love to share my story and the things that make up who I am. And I definitely see my journey as not a consequence, but as a direct line of how I relate to the world through my identities. So I always talk about intersectionality and identity. You see at the top left corner, that's my grandfather, who is mestizo. He's half Spanish, half Taino Indian. My mother is his daughter, which is darker skin. My dad, his lineage is from Catalonia and the north of Spain, so has way lighter skin. So I love to acknowledge those things because colorism was a big part of my growing up. And that's why I center that image with my brother, who is right there on a little boat that he rents out when I go there in San Francisco and in San Diego, because we are definitely connected as always. But he experienced things that I never did. But through his experience of being called different things, because he has a darker skin, the idea of identity and race, even in Puerto Rico, was always very present. My mom had issues with her color. She was also a woman and small, but short, as she calls it, with a very hoarse voice. So I always try to acknowledge that I'm definitely a product of my parents. My mom is the first woman dean of School of Dentistry, the first woman president of the College of Dentistry, the first woman to win the Geis Award. She's the first of everything in Puerto Rico that has to do with dentistry. She's a glass ceiling breaker and very hard shoes to fill, hence why I did architecture. And I rejected healthcare, even though I ended up doing healthcare planning. My dad, in writing the book, I learned that had a very similar upbringing. My favorite story about my father is that he bought his first car. He loves Mustangs. He bought his first car, shining the shoes of the wealthy neighbors while he was going to high school. And in writing that book, in writing the chapter in Latinas in Architecture, I learned that he was also, when he was being the executive healthcare manager for 13 hospitals, that he was also doing the research of minoritized communities in Puerto Rico through Medicare. So it's not, I think, by coincidence that I ended up doing the work that I'm doing, because my mother's practice was centered around disadvantaged communities and the neighborhoods in Puerto Rico that were sort of impoverished or settled in mangroves and areas that were flooded. And my dad did that through the work that he was doing in healthcare as well. I always, of course, share that I'm also part of the LGBTQI community. I didn't think that would happen in my lifetime, but I had the opportunity to marry my beautiful wife. That's on the top right of the screen. And I center all of these things through the lens of colonialism in Puerto Rico, what it means to be a mix of three beautiful cultures, and also a colony of the United States, which we sort of still are. So you heard a little bit about the intersectionality of my nationality, my gender, my community. And of course, I wouldn't be where I am if it wasn't for the intersection of academia, practice, and my volunteerism, which I echo everything that Raquel said, and Graciela, of course, who you were here, and Alicia.
I found on Wiktionary.
My apologies for Alexa.
She said is a noun meaning conflicting.
I should have turned that off.
Oh my God, Alexa.
I don't know if she got excited too. My goodness. So as similar to Raquel's story, I love to acknowledge that my path to where I am today has never been linear. I went to an all-girl Catholic school. I was a Girl Scout, but I secretly really wanted to be a Boy Scout because their camp was significantly better than the Girl Scouts. I was very early on engaged with community engagement and CLEA, which is the Council of Latin American Schools of Architecture. So I loved volunteering. I thought that I was going to become a geneticist, so I went to the University of Puerto Rico. But when I started doing work in a lab, I recognized that I really hated working in the lab because of the spaces that I was in. It was white block buildings, no windows. So I started studying geology and physics and doing work in a subversive artist group. And my geology professor went to one of my installations and said, "You should study architecture." And I said, yeah, everybody's telling me that. I said, "No, do the summer program." And I said, "Okay, I hate building models. That's going to be fun." And of course, I did the summer program and I loved building models. So I decided to transition to the School of Architecture. And even though I was already on my third year of the School of Architecture, my professor, her husband, went to Syracuse University. And she said, "You should really consider Syracuse University. You will have the opportunity to travel the world. They have a phenomenal program in Florence." And I remember thinking, well, this is going to take a long time. And she said, "No, but you're already finished. You're almost finished with your undergrad degree. You don't need to finish this degree in environmental design. Just finish what you were doing and do your master's." So I went to Syracuse University, which is kind of a shock. In my mind, I always kind of share this story. If I could do something without failing, I'd be on Broadway. I thought Syracuse really close to New York City. Island mentality. I never made it to New York City. So it was really kind of a shock to go from the beach to Syracuse, but I loved my experience there. I was able to do a semester in Florence, a summer in Austria, and a summer in Hong Kong, in China, in Thailand, and in Cambodia. And those things changed the way that I saw the world. I practiced in Puerto Rico doing community engagement work, facilitating communities that were in floodplains and understanding what it meant to build community and then relocating them to areas that they would be safer. So of course, hindsight 2020, I look at that and I think these have been the bedrocks of my experience. So I worked for very, very large firms, Smith Group, HOK, and HKS. But as I was going through my journey in my practice, I kept recognizing that I loved building community. I loved creating spaces for people to thrive, to tell their stories like what we're doing today. So I brought Pechacucha to DC. I was the third person in the US to bring it from Tokyo. And then I wanted to elevate the representation of Latin American interior designers, our engineers and architects like that in DC, and be able to support the Latin community in the area that I live in my native language, which I had never done before. So I built and helped co-found the La Idea Committee in DC. Because of that, I got introduced to programming and leadership, like the Christopher Kelly Leadership Development Program. Through that, I learned about opportunities in AIA nationally to engage with emerging professionals, like the National Associates Committee. And through that, I ended up at HKS. And at HKS, I started to recognize how these things started to blend together. The idea of what I'd learned in academia, how the profession was molding the things that I was doing, and how volunteerism allowed me the opportunity to build my leadership and the things that I was doing. So I was asked to join the AIDC board. Because of that, I joined the Women's Leadership Summit. And because of the Women's Leadership Summit, and what I felt at the time was a lack of recognition of the need to embed emerging professionals early on in their career, I created WIELD. Because of my visibility in WIELD, I was asked to join the AIA National Board. I got licensed after 14 years, which I do not recommend anybody do. You forget how to study. And then I was asked to join NOMA and develop a new position as chair of research and development. I've done probably every building type imaginable, from high-end residences to the oil minister of Saudi Arabia, which I do not wish to do again, even though it's beautiful. I've done healthcare, higher education, a mosque in Riyadh. I've done the Richmond County Justice Center, which is actually one of the main reasons why I chose to do healthcare, because I wanted to use my skill sets to create environments for people to heal, which is how I ended up in HKS. As I mentioned, I created or founded WIELD, which is now We Inspiring Emerging Leaders in Design, then We Women Inspiring Emerging Leaders in Design. because like I said, I love the idea that we need to share more stories and become more visible and provide opportunities for people to listen, to be inspired, and to grow and stay in the profession. This was definitely in recognition of the Equity by Design survey results from 2015 that acknowledged that 32% of women and minorities leave the profession. So I wanted to create a space for people to feel inspired, to be resilient, and to overcome, and make sure that this industry mirrored what felt to me how I wanted to impact the community. And when I looked up, I didn't see anybody that looked like me, and I wanted to change that. So at the intersection of all of these things, I think is how I ended up being asked to become Director of Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion at HKS. And I feel like if it hadn't been for my journey and the intersectionality in my journey of all of these things, personally and professionally, I would not be in this role, and I would not find so much joy in the opportunity to amplify other voices and become part of the change in our industry. And like Raquel said, architecture to me is also about people. Life is about people. And there's no better way to channel sort of a story than to share my own journey and hope that it inspires other people to share their own journeys. Even though Raquel and I's story is just almost identical, I think there's so much power in those synergies and mirroring that. So the end of my story, of course, is speak your truth, because it's the most powerful tool you have. And I leave you with my immediate family, my dad, my mom, my sister-in-law from Venezuela, my brother, my wife, myself, and my adorable nephew, who I think was also going to become an architect or an engineer. So I hope this journey, I imagine it's going to be mirrored by Alicia and Graciela in some way or fashion. But I love that a lot of this has to do with how we align so much of the work that we do outside of our practice and inside of our practice. So that's my story.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Our panelist number 3 is Alicia. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, everyone. Good to be here. You may hear screaming children in the background, like many Latino households. So let's get started. Let me see. Let me share my screen. It's good to be here. I'm so excited. Raquel was very nice to say that I gave her a call, but really I stalked her when she gave this beautiful present. She gave, and I'll tell you what happened is I came across her profile on LinkedIn, and she gave this really nice congratulatory speech to the graduating class of 2020, the architecture students, because what happened in 2020, it was just like our world got upside down, and she just gave this really inspiring, encouraging speech, and I was like, who is that? And so I sent her a message, and I told her about my plans with Architina, and the rest is history. Here we are. So I have been known to stalk Architinas. I may have stalked Giselle too. I sent you a couple. I had to be persistent with you. I remember that. You're a busy woman. So let me this whole thing with Latinas in architecture, this movement, I feel, with Architina and our book, it has something it started because the 1% really bothered me. It really bothered me along my whole journey of trying to become an architect, going to school, going to the university, getting a job and working in the profession, and then going through that process of licensure. And then just seeing that number and seeing the lack of representation in the offices and in the industry, and wondering what is going on. And I would revisit the numbers at NCARB to see, okay, what's going on with representation, leadership that look like us, right? So I made a couple of phone calls, and I asked, what is your experience like? And the sentiment was the same, really, among many of the Latinas that I talked to. 100% of the Latinas that I talked to is that it was lonely. So this slide here, I am a founder and principal of AP Monarch, and it's a architecture firm that focuses on sustainable architecture. And that was really my passion since day one. I knew that I wanted to be an architect when I was 6 years old. Let me see here. So I fell in love with the construction of buildings. You know, I was at a construction site, and we can all close our eyes right now and smell freshly poured concrete. I mean, you can smell it. And it was something about that smell, seeing the yellow machines, that I didn't know what it was, what I was looking at, but I knew that I wanted to do that. I'm like, I want to do that. I don't know what it is, but I want to, you know, lay brick. I want to build buildings and all of that. And it never went away. And so, and I knew at that time, I'm the daughter of Mexican immigrants, and I was born and raised in Chicago. And all of our summers were spent in Mexico, in Morelia, Michoacan. And those summers were really is what fostered my connection to nature. Because as soon as we got there, it was okay, run around, roam out anywhere you want in the mountains, with the animals, and that was it. So those were my summers. And so this is me, the cowgirl with my mother, and just going on walks in the mountains. And that's what we would do, right? And it's just very green and luscious, and feeling very connected, and feeling, you know, a sense of respect for nature and its creatures. And so that's how these two came together, of architecture and sustainability. This is the year that guess which one I am. This is the year that I was off to architecture school in France. And here is my core group, my inspiration, my parents, and then my maternal grandparents. You know, there's nobody else in the family that has studied architecture. This is a career that is for males, right? Or what is a woman doing in this career? But they supported me 100% of the time. Maybe they didn't understand it 100% of the time, but I definitely got the support. So here we are at O'Hare Airport. They're sending me off, my first time away for a very long time from my entire family. So, oh, you can't see my T-square. I have a T-square in my hand. And so fast forward, you know, like Raquel and Giselle has shared about family. Family is a big piece of who we are. And in my case, the support network that I have, that it takes to run a business and thrive in it. And so I have my son and my daughter, teaching her the way, right? You know, she wants to learn how to make things. Okay, let's learn how to make things. You're not too young, so let's do it. And I wish I had the video to show you, but when she cut her first piece, she was like, yeah, you know. That sense of satisfaction was just good. And then you know, it's always good to surround yourself with people that support you. I strongly believe in that. And I am blessed to have my husband who just like supports me 1,000%, right? This is not a career or somebody who has a business. Sometimes you're not 100% supported, and that kind of hurts the business, but he just lets me roam free and do what I want to create, to grow the business. And my kids are with me there 100% of the time, listening. You know, little children listen, right? They're always listening. They may be playing off to the side, but they're always watching and they're always listening. And yes, they do know the number of licensed Latina architects in the US. They know the percentages and why we're raising them. This is my team, and it's growing because I had that experience of, you know, there were very few Latinos in the firm, right? And so I wanted to grow my firm, growing my firm with people that are usually underrepresented or unseen in firms, because that's how I felt, even though I raised my hand to do certain things, to ask for certain things. And when I say this, that wasn't my whole experience. I had very good experiences, but in order to like advance my career in sustainable architecture or wanting to meet a client or go to a meeting, sometimes I felt unseen. So this is my way of saying, here we are just as knowledgeable. We love architecture, and we also contribute to the built landscape. So in our little firm, we represent, Black, brown, and LGBTQ, all in this little group. So I'm very proud of having such a diverse group in our in our little firm, and we have a good time. So I've had the company for about 15 years. In June, it'll be 15 years. And we are definitely planning our quinceañera. The ethos of the firm is to design buildings that look good, feel good, and perform great. And we definitely consider ourselves the pollinators of the built environment. And it's behind the name too. The name has its meaning of, the monarch butterfly, or butterflies represent healthy environments, right? And to me, it's like, who doesn't smile when they see a butterfly? Everybody smiles. You point to the butterfly from, if you're old, no matter how old you are or how young you are, you're like, look at the butterfly, and it represents healthy air, healthy water. And it's also the state symbol of where my family is from, in Michoacan. It's the monarch butterfly. So we have worked at my firm, we've worked on mostly commercial interiors from the very beginning. We've always done sustainability consulting, as far as getting projects certified with LEED, Living Building, and now we're doing well. And hopefully Passive House will soon be certified Passive House. And so we've done a number of commercial interior offices. We do healthcare centers. So here are a couple of projects. I mean, right off the bat, one of our first projects to the left is Exelon corporate headquarters, and we achieved LEED Platinum. So it just goes to show that, I felt like I raised my hand a lot to express my interest in sustainable architecture and working at firms, and I just wasn't seen. But in the meantime, I was doing my own independent research because I loved it so much. I believe in it so much. And so by the time I started my own business and started acquiring clients, I was ready. Like, I knew the systems, I know how to get there, and boom, we got LEED Platinum with the first project. And this was also a collaboration with one of my last employers. So not all things were bad, but we were able to work together. And it's interesting how the dynamic changed from being an employee to a partnership. I'm very excited about this project in particular. It's the client calls it Centro Amazing, because amazing things are going to happen here. And it's located in Aguascalientes, in a town called Calvillo in Mexico. And this came out of a talk that I was giving about sustainable architecture and what I believe in. And after that talk, I was approached by the client and said, we have a project for you. We want to hire you, just like right there on the spot. And so these are our design concepts for this civic cultural center. Constructed out of rammed earth. It'll be built locally. And, if you're familiar with rammed earth, we want to make it carbon neutral. Rammed earth is, cools in the hot days and warms in the cool nights. So this is a dream project, and I can't wait to continue sending updates on this. And here we have Architina, my other baby that was born in 2020. And it has so many, midwives. midwives or surrogates and that are joining by the day. We have grown since 2020. This is our very first in persona event because everything had been virtual because of the pandemic. So we were really happy to be together, to see each other, to see how tall we were and all of that. So this was last year, and here we are again, just you know, enjoying seeing so many Latinas. That very first call that we had for Architina, it was like a mix of hearts all over and you know, just mysterious and wonder. And I'm like, is this really happening? And are there really these many Latina architects? Yes, and they keep coming and they will continue to come. And here is the book. And I hope, you know, if you haven't read the book yet, if you haven't gotten the book yet, I really do encourage you to get it, because it gives a glimpse of stories of 19 women, multicultural women, all across different spectrums of the profession, from the very beginning to very, very, very experienced, you know, firm owners, principals. And it just shows you the perseverance that each one has gone through, from, you know, leaving their country, as you hear, like, you know, with Raquel, and learning the language or not being supported, you know, having the wage gap and so forth, right? It's been an incredible journey. This was our book launch at the Chicago Architecture Center. I feel more are coming. It was just a beautiful event to be together again and embracing our story, embracing our voice, and elevating each other. And so here we are, we all got to speak a little bit about, you know, what that is feeling like, and empowering each other along this journey. So here are the numbers that my kids know very, very well. It's almost, you know, 122,000. About 20 to 24% are women licensed architects, and less than one are licensed Latinas. So I ask you, who's ready to move that needle?
Thank you, Alicia. Thank you so
Thank you.
much. And then our panelist number 4, Graciela, our co-chair of the Women in Architecture. Welcome, Graciela.
Thank you so much. Let me pull up my presentation. Let me know if it works. Last night I had a little bit of issues.
It works.
Can you see it?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much again. My name is Graciela Carrillo. I work currently at Nassau Boses. Ooh, I don't know what happened there. Senior manager. I am originally from Bogota, Colombia. My slides are completely different, Giselle and Raquel and Alicia. Yeah, no, I thought about more sharing my story here, but I'm gonna, of course, talk about my past and where I come from very proudly. So I came from Bogota, Colombia as an architect to Long Island, New York. And I wanted to put this together just to show a little bit of what an immigrant architect has to go through in order to get all the paperwork in place. And I'm not talking only about education, licensing, but also immigration. So in this image, you'll see 3 different paths. One was my education at the top. Middle is my immigration path, and at the bottom is the volunteer. I have never shown this picture of my family. This is the first time I show it there. I come from a family of civil engineers. My dad, who is holding me, he was a civil engineer. My oldest brother, which is right here, he was also an civil engineer, and my brother Carlos, he lives in Florida. He's a civil engineer. My dad passed away when I was 11 years old, and my oldest brother Jorge passed away when I was 17 years old. Today is his anniversary of his passing, so it's a very emotional day for me. But also, I always tell people I have those two angels that have always lightened my life. And I truly, truly believe that everything that happens in my life is because I have that, that wonderful help and guidance. And that actually, if you ask me, what's your motivation to be where you are and what you do, I think about them all the time. Every time I accomplish something, or I'm always thinking my dad and my brother will be super proud of me. I gotta do these the best that I can. So I just wanted to share that, because like all the other women here share, Latin American culture and the family culture is very strong. So for me, actually, to lose half of my family when I was so young, and then to lose my other brother because he moved to the States when I was only 15 years old. So I basically grew up with my mom as an adult. And then my mom went to Florida. I came here. So it's like I didn't have that much time with my entire family. But I value a lot all the values that they taught me, and the culture itself. So anyway, to wrap up, I moved to this country in 2003. In Colombia, I was working as an architect for the government. I was managing a lot of infrastructure projects for the capital city, which is Bogota. That was an amazing experience because, like I said, I come from a family of engineers. I was supposed to be an engineer, but because everybody told me, oh, you're going to be an engineer, you're going to manage the business of the family, I was like, no, I don't want to be an engineer just because everybody's telling me to be an engineer. So I chose architecture just because I didn't want to do what people told me to do. That's my story, honestly. So even though I graduated from architecture, I started working for engineers because I still loved engineering. And then I started working for the government on infrastructure projects, a lot of engineering projects, a lot of architectural projects. And in 2002, something really, really bad happened that I had to leave the country because of my safety. In other words, my boss at the government, she got killed. And they told me, well, you could be next. So you need to be very careful. And I was like, I don't want to live my life like that. I was very young. And I always wanted to come here anyway to study and to achieve other goals. So it was like the perfect opportunity for me to just close the door, pack bags, come to the States. I got a job at an engineering company, of course, engineering, in Long Island. And I came here with a work visa. I worked for a while with my work visa. I had to extend the work visa while I got my green card. I applied for the green card through work. And finally, I got my green card. And 5 years later, I became a citizen, which I have to say, I think it was pretty much the second most important day of my life when I became a US citizen. Because to me, and people maybe don't understand this when they are Americans, it was definitely the American dream. I was dreaming and I struggled so much to get my green card. So to me, to achieve the citizenship was like a blessing. I'm like, oh my God, like I'm safe. I don't have to go back. I can stay here. I love this country and I want to contribute, So that was my immigration path. But at the same time, I was doing my educational path. Like I said, I wanted to fulfill my master's, which I did. Then I became a lead AP. The ARE process took me 5 years because of a lot of struggles that we can talk about later on. Became licensed in 2013. And at the same time, I started volunteering, pretty much like what Raquel said, like, what are you doing? You're doing a lot of great things, but you should be doing things for other people too. So I started volunteering for AIA and they invited me in 2011 to be the associate director. And from there, I just, I went through the different positions at the chapter. And let me see if I can, no. And I'm going to talk about that specifically in the next slides, because I think it's a really nice story to share with all of you. And I hope some of you get inspired by the work that we are doing at the Long Island chapter. So those on the green bottom line is at my different positions at local, state, and national level. And just going to talk a little bit about how my leadership path was. That's me working on a landfill in 2020, at the end of 2020. I love construction. I was supposed to be an engineer again, but I love design too. So it's a mix of everything. But when I started working for this company with the work visa, I started as an intern architect, and then when I got my license, I was working as an architect. But the beauty of that job that I was doing is the diversity of experience that I was able to handle. Not only on architectural projects, which my projects, as opposed to all the other panelists, were more municipal related and local government, small projects related, like facilities, but also a lot of engineering projects that I was involved, like landfill capping, bulkheads, marinas, parks, roads, a lot of things, even environmental, because my master's was in environmental. So the photo there with the machetes is me in a wetland collecting samples for a mosquito project in Long Island. So it was really, really exciting. I was even designing websites. So it was very fulfilling, and also managing lead projects in Long Island. So that was great. And that was like a typical outfit. I was wearing a skirt going to a fancy meeting, but then I had to go to a project site. So I would just wear my boots all day. I'm like, I don't have time to change my boots. I'll just wear that. I don't care. So that's just how diverse you have to be to fit everywhere. And last year, through AIA and networking with AIA, I got an offer to join NASO BOCES, which is an educational agency funded by the New York State Educational Department. So we serve 56 school districts in Nassau County, and NASO BOCES itself owns 13 special ed educations and 3 technical schools. We own 37 buildings, more than 100 programs, 4,000 employees. It's a huge agency. I never worked for like such a big institution. So it was like a big change for me from going from like engineering and architecture to now managing capital projects, operational projects for schools. But it certainly fulfills my heart, because I'm helping all these kids that are special education kids. So when I go to the schools and I see all these kids with disabilities, different type of not only physical, but also mental disabilities, it really fulfills my heart that I'm helping them in providing them a better space for not only their education, but also their therapy. So that's nice. And this is a little bit of my volunteering story. So of course I joined Architina last year when Alicia invited me to be part of the mentoring cohorts and also to be part of the book. I want to just say something. We had last night our first session of the mentoring program. We have 16 mentees and 16 mentors. And the first part of the presentation, we gave our spiel, like the mentors talk about whatever we needed to present. And the next hour, the mentees had the opportunity to share with us what they are expecting from the mentoring program and what they are struggling with through licensing. And that hour, we were all crying all the time because they feel so lonely, like Alicia said, so alone in this process that they are just struggling a lot. And they were crying because of what they're going through. And we as the mentors, we were crying because it reminded me, at least when I was doing my licensing process, I was that person alone, that I didn't have the support system to help me going through the licensure. Even for Americans, for people that went here to school, is difficult testing. Think about us that come from another country, another language, culture, education, to start testing for something that you never thought it was going to be that huge monster. So definitely a nice group that I feel it was the best thing that Alicia could have done for all the Latinas that are going through the licensure path. And my other beautiful group that I have is Long Island, of course, AIA Long Island. Just to give you a summary, it's a chapter 75 years old. We have about 700 members, more than that actually. I was the third woman president to be elected in 2020. My presidency was 2020, 2021. I'm the immediate past president right now and the first Latina president. So that's really, really cool. I'm very proud of that. I had to say that, of course, on my speech when I was elected, because I want to, raise that awareness that the chapter was not very diverse, but it's more diverse now. And I'm very happy that we have been able to break that barrier. And currently, I'm also the strategic counselor for New York State, representing New York State at AIA National. So I'm very excited for that opportunity too, because it's going to give me more tools, resources, network options to try to, make a better impact or bigger impact. I don't know what it could be, but I'm just starting. So I'm really looking forward for whatever it comes from the Strategic Council. I'm just going to talk about 4 things that I want everybody to just know about Long Island if they don't know me. So we founded with Jake Rivalsi, which is here in the room, in 2015, the Emerging Professionals Group or Committee, because of the lack of participation of young professionals. Every time we had board meetings, member meetings, we never saw the young people, where are they? We have members that are super young, newly, professionals, young architects, but we don't come to our meetings. So we created this committee and we have done a lot of nice programs there. We have a great mentoring program, ARE study group. We do interviews, mock-ups, happy hours. Of course, I'm not the co-chair anymore. Now other people are taking over. So that's great to see how it just started 7 years ago, but it's been steadily, active. I'm still involved, of course, because it's like my first baby. So I still help them out a lot, but they run the show. They are amazing. And in 2018, for the same reason, I didn't see the women of the chapter. I mean, we have 700 members, and from them about 110 are women. So it's still a very, very small percentage, but I never saw them. I didn't know who they were, just a few. So I talked to Ebru Sulker, which is our amazing co-chair, and I'm like, Ebru, we need to start this. And we started in 2018, and we have done a lot of great programs since 2018. It's a group that have grown a lot. We started, I think we were 5 or 6, and now we are maybe 12 or 15, just in the committee that, help organize things, active all the time. So that one is another one of my babies that I loved a lot, because we have created this space where we support each other, we help each other, but we also connect with other women across the states to just share different experiences. This one is the Immigrant Architects Coalition that I co-founded with other 2 peers, one from California and another one from Dallas. And we created this basically because of our struggle as immigrants going through licensure. And with that group that we started in 2019, so it's been almost 3 years. And we are developing guidelines for immigrants. So when they come to this country, they have a 101 guideline on not only talk about licensure, but also cultural bias, interview process, work, different aspects that when you come here and you don't know nobody, you're lost, because that's how I was. I really didn't have that network. So besides that, we have a group of collaborators that are working with us on the guidelines. And we also go to state conferences, college schools of architectures. We have presented at NOMA, just sharing our experiences and connecting with other immigrants. So our network grows all the time. And this is another group that's another of my babies. And the last one was just an initiative that I started during COVID. It's a website that compiles a bunch of events for women in architecture and resources for women in design, podcasts by women in design. There is a link for a project that I work with Diane Lee, she's in Washington, to compile salaries for women in architecture and start talking about salary, because we know that the gap between a woman and a man is about 16% in salary. So we have right now, we have compiled about 800 women from around the States with salaries, different positions, different experiences. The next phase is to compile information on men so we can start comparing apples to apples. Because when you go to these websites that talk about salaries, it's just general. It doesn't discriminate women or men. And we want to see those numbers so we can start looking at the difference. And then you have a tool and a resource to advocate for yourself to start, lowering that gap. So that's something that is still in progress. And I think we went over the time. That was the story of my life. And thank you for being so patient. And I think we can start with the panel discussion finally, Ebru.
Thank you so much. I just, this is truly an honor to have you guys here and just to hear your stories. It's a great motivator. And I want to thank you guys for doing what you do, because it takes a lot. And you also have personal lives and you juggle families, and it's very big. So I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. So we'll start with a couple of questions. I'm going to try to make it like 10 minutes of the questions that we have for our panelists, and then we'll open the floor to our attendees to ask their questions. They can add it into the chat. If you feel like you don't want to forget your question, feel free to add it, and then I'll read it at around 7:10, 7:15, because we're going to be finishing at 7:30. I'm sure everybody has some dinner plans, going out, partying. So our first question, the book. I have the book and I have my tabs. I've already started kind of making my notes. Writing a book is not easy. So I just kind of wanted to see what your experience was writing the book, and has it opened up any other new doors for you? Maybe other new goals that you might have in mind, and what was your journey?
Who wants to start? Go ahead.
Come on, Giselle, go ahead.
Okay, you go, Giselle. I'll go after you.
Me? Like I sort of started covering that a little bit in my presentation, sort of intentionally. For me, I actually struggle a lot writing. I don't watch my podcast. I don't listen to them. I don't watch videos. Like I'm the sort of the Adam Driver of architecture. It happens and then I move on. And writing for me is very hard. I still think very much in Spanish. For some reason, I think I'm Gabriel Garcia Marquez. It's run on sentences forever. So the idea of sitting down and writing down my thoughts that are usually just running through my head was already a struggle. But the idea that this could be an opportunity for somebody else to reflect on their own journey and the things that they were doing was a clear motivator for me. And when I started thinking about, okay, how do I distill the story in a way that honors my family, which is very much things that I know that my parents' journey mirrors why I do this work. For me, centering them and why I've always been passionate about community engagement, about disadvantaged communities, which is reflected in growing up and in a sort of the area was very upper middle. We were always at the lowest end of the upper middle because my parents chose consistently to put other people first, their patients, their community. So we never had a lot of money, and it was fine. And people say, well, your mother did all these things. My mother takes Medicare and Medicaid. Like that was her journey. So I wanted to elevate them and put them as center of the story and me as a product of their journey that makes me sort of feel more comfortable in showing up with my identity and carrying that journey with me. And that was in part why I felt less conscious, even though I still am, about what I was writing and more about the opportunity to elevate them and a story that people don't know about them and where they are and how I try to embody them as much as possible. And I am privileged that they had that journey so that I can have my own and share that story. So even though that's not much about architecture, it is very much about journey to becoming a professional, in the journey of becoming who they always wanted to be within the construct of a society that's not really supportive of who they are and how they show up. My grandparents, they didn't go to college. Well, only one of my grandparents did after my mother and her sisters went to college. So it wasn't a whole lot about architecture, but it was more about the journey, celebrating the journey, acknowledging where I am and where I have to go, and hopefully inspiring other people to get there too.
I'm gonna echo Giselle. I love your story, by the way. It was a struggle. I think most of us would say it was a struggle. Alicia can tell you that I probably was not gonna make it in the book because they had to email me at least 20 times to be, where's your story, Raquel? Where's your story? But I didn't think I have a story. And it's still hard to think that I have a story because I used to always start comparing myself to others and be like, well, but they went through all of this. And I've been privileged. Look, I'm at this job. I went to college and all these things. But to everyone's voice here that told me, Raquel, everyone has a story. Someone will always resonate with this. Just tell it. And I try to take a similar step with like you, Giselle, and be like, well, let me talk about my country, where I grew up, my green card process. Like Graciela, I will agree it is the hardest thing in the world, and it makes me so stressed and nervous all the time. I've been in the United States for 12 years and I'm still not even a green card holder. COVID put a big dent on it, and past administration I have put of it. It was just a whole thing where my green card had to be stopped completely mid-process when COVID happened. So I was really scared at that time because people were getting laid off. And if that was me, I would have had to leave the country. And it was very easy for people to tell me, don't worry, everything's gonna work out. And you know, what needs to happen happens. And I was like, yeah, I'm always very positive, but you have to understand, you're telling this to a person who created her whole life in the United States. I do architecture here. Yes, I'll be happy back home if I have to leave, but I don't know who I am. And I've made my life here. I want to stay here. So it's just hard because I understand that people are trying to be nice. And then lastly, in the book, it was more talking about what I wish I knew when I was younger. When I started my field, about speaking up and asking for what you want, because no one's going to hand us what we want, right? We need to ask for it. And unless we do so, we're just going to be stuck where we're at from the beginning. And a lot of other things that if you read the book. So it slowly started becoming something. I do wish someone had written it because it is hard to write, but I'm very happy that we all finished it. And got it.
I can totally relate to both of you, and I'm happy now I'm hearing that you struggle, because so many weekends at night I would sit down with a notebook. I'm like, I don't know where to start. I think I can't do this. And I already told Alicia, I'm going to give her 2,000 words. I don't know. I was panicking. I finally did it. But the process actually was a beautiful process for me, because I discovered truly who I was. The presentation that you just saw was created after I put together my story. Actually, I had to do a presentation for a firm in Colombia. They contacted me just after Alicia contacted me. And they told me, you got to give a speech of 1 hour about your life. And I'm like, who's going to talk about an hour about their lives? But the book helped me to realize, yes, you have a story. You have something to share with others that maybe others can learn from you, and maybe others can relate to you, like, you know, going through the same struggles or paths or whatever. So it was a beautiful experience just to know. So anyway, just to summarize it, I was supposed to write 2,000 words and I made it to 3,700. And I was like, I can't cut anything. It's impossible. Of course, the editors came back. You need to cut. This is too long. We can't do this. So that was the second struggle. Oh my God, what I'm going to cut in this story. But the whole process was beautiful. And I definitely recommend everyone in this room to try it. Start telling your story. We all have amazing stories to tell, from a family perspective, professional, personal. You know, it's so much that you can share. And the beauty of that is that you can help someone else. After, one of the questions was, I think, what doors open to you? Many doors. Like, a lot of people started contacting, like, oh, I read your story and I felt so related to you. I'm going through this and that. So I started having like monthly or weekly meetings with different women that were contacting me because they just read the stories and they wanted to talk because they were going through some sort of process. So that's what I like the most, that it has opened doors to to help other women that are maybe living in a lot of similar paths that we were living. So thank you, Alicia, for that.
Thank you. Alicia, do you have anything to say? You're the creator of this.
I probably had it the easiest, right? You know, my piece was, you know, setting the tone as to why, you know, why we're writing these stories. And you know, I shared that earlier. It shows a glimpse of the Latina experience. And if we can connect with just one more Latina going through the exams, or, you know, doubting, or whatever challenge they may be going through, then it has a ripple effect. So I had the easiest job out of all of the co-authors.
Thank you. We're at 7:15, so I'm gonna try to ask one more question and then I'm gonna jump into the panelists. I mean, the attendees. Next question, as a Latina in the US, what are some of the challenges that you have faced?
Identity, keeping my identity where people might not necessarily celebrate it, and trying to surround myself with people that will. Coming here, I, of course, adapted myself to this whole society, but I still am who I am. I like listening to my music, eating my food, being Guzman Diara, not only Guzman. And that's important. That's important for me. And I made really sure at my job, I remember the first day when I came in, they gave me 500 business cards with one last name. And I was like, no, I'm Guzman Diara. And then they printed them and they printed the second name wrong again. And I was like, no, I'm Guzman Diara. And it sounds petty, but that's part of my culture. And also the music and the food, because it can get lost. It can easily get lost. It's a fear I have when I have my own, if I get to have my own children here, is how can I still teach them about my culture when people might not be interested in it. I've been grateful to find friends that always tell me like, what are you listening to? Or let's go eat this or that. But it's just making sure that I talk about it. You have to talk about it and teach it, because people might not know how cool it is until you tell them like, hey, look at this, or this is how it is back home. And I just make sure, I don't sound like a broken record, I promise, but I just make sure to talk about my culture.
Yeah, and the reality is that it is a white male dominated field, right? So how do we fit into that space if we have an accent, or if we wear red lipstick even, you know, that's a cultural thing too sometimes. And so it can become a challenge because you're so different. And if people aren't used to seeing something different, then you can experience some exclusion, right? I think it is changing and the conversations are happening across the country in firms. Just conversations. I believe we still have a long way to go for inclusion and equity, but at least the conversations are happening.
I'll share something really, really specific. For me, is language. It's language. It's always wondering if I'm communicating myself appropriately, if people are understanding what I'm trying to say. And I know I recognize really, really quickly, I'm in DC, which is not by chance. I was very strategic in where I was going to be. DC is a very transient city. And because it's very transient, we have many people, different languages and countries. And I was actually talking about this with my wife last night. If you know another language, or have been taught another language, whether you're American or not, if you've taught or learned another language, it shifts how you think and how you embrace and bridge across those differences. And it wasn't until, and I love HKS, but it wasn't until I joined HKS in a smaller office, not a smaller firm, but in a smaller office where there were very few people with accents, or that English was not their first language. I started to recognize how, and it's not necessarily a microaggression, but how people became less willing to understand what I was trying to say and read beyond what I was saying when I joined that office. So the idea that I may be miscommunicating, that I may be misinterpreted because I'm thinking in Spanish. I know I think in Spanish, but because I sometimes use accent, that always is very present. And unfortunately, in two of my firms, I know women that have been taken out of projects because clients have not wanted to work with somebody with an accent. So I have centered that in my life, and that's why writing is hard. Communicating is very hard, even though I do this all the time. It's still a big struggle, and it's not only for Latinas, because I think, of course, it spans beyond what we're doing. But what I have seen, and I use this data all the time, Pew Research has shown that Gen Zs are a quarter Hispanic. So the future of our industry is going to become Hispanic. Our leaders need to understand that. So I leverage that in acknowledgement that if you want to learn, if you want to be an inclusive leader, if you really want to be a high performing leader of creating high performing teams, this is where you got to be. This is what you got to learn. This is the future of our industry. So you want to learn Spanish? Let's put Bad Bunny in reggaeton and see what happens. So I've embraced it because I've also acknowledged the data that supports where we're going and where we're moving towards.
Yeah, I totally agree with Giselle on the language barrier. That was definitely my barrier, but also feeling that you are that minority that you need to, overcome. And that the first exposure that I had to that feeling was, I didn't mention, but in Colombia, I went to a German school. And when I was 16, my mom sent me to Germany for 6 months to live there with a family and go to school there. And that's where I really felt the discrimination. I was a Latina in a German town. I went to Hamburg, and that's when I really felt that. So it gives me the mindset and the tools to approach that differently when I came to the States. But I still felt that yeah, I am the different person with this accent. And again, I spoke German, not English as the second language. So it was even harder for me to, between the German and the Spanish accent, come up with English. So it was difficult, definitely. And on top of that, working for an engineering firm and in a lot of construction sites, being that Latina Spanish with an accent, it's hard because of the communication. It's hard to just show that you know what you're doing and that people can trust you and that they can follow your guide or your guidance. So that was a learning process, definitely, but that it can be overcome. I feel now very comfortable. I embrace my accent. I embrace that I look different. And I learned all of that throughout the years, but I have to also be honest, it was a struggle at the beginning, but mentally I was able to work on that. So that was my experience.
And Ebru, I know you have another question, but echoing the language thing, I'll never forget. This was 7 years ago, and I had just started at the firm, worked really hard on a project. We were going to show the office on a presentation. It was not even project related. And someone who worked with me, my same level, they were like, oh, who's going to present? This person said, like, well, maybe Raquel shouldn't present because English is not her first language. I remember like sinking in. Like I said, told all of you, I've developed who I am throughout the years and advocating for myself. I didn't do that. So that day I just shut up, went to a phone room and called my mom, almost crying. Yes, I'm human. So yes, we can cry. And just being like, I don't know what to do. I love presenting in public and I didn't know that was going to ever be a problem, the hindering me to present. I just felt devastated, heartbroken and defeated. But then I woke up the next day. I was like, no, that is my project and I'm going to present it. So I came and told that person, I'm doing my project. I'm presenting that. And from that day on, I've presented so many other things in my firm and proven to people, hey, you can publicly speak, even if you have a little bit of an accent or you just have to practice a little bit more. So
That's amazing, Raquel. I mean, and even for me, it's like I've been asked, where did you learn how to speak English so well? You know, it's just like you just have to like you know, let's move on.
Right. It wasn't Mickey Mouse Club and Nickelodeon or anything like that growing up. That was me. The Disney.
I mean, I grew up speaking Spanish in my home and stuff. Spanish was my first language, even though I was born and raised in Chicago, but Spanish was first. And then not until I had English immersion school, boom. But yeah, languages is a big thing.
Yeah, I can vouch for that myself. I mean, I'm not Latina, but my second language is Turkish. I was born here, went back to Turkey, and then coming back here. I was like, uh-oh, what do I speak, English or Turkish? It was kind of like all over the place. They ended up putting me into ESL, and I didn't get out of ESL until like high school. And
wow.
it was tough. And, you know, I married Dominican. My son is half Hispanic. And I'm like, well, the school system sucks. So I'm like, he doesn't have any other language. He only speaks English. Meanwhile, he was growing up with trilingual language, you know, like 3 languages in one shot. But it's tough. We can talk about it so much, but.
Another lecture that we can put together.
Yeah.
For
But it's definitely, studies have proven that if you know multiple languages, it's a huge access to many, many things. Your brain functions totally differently in a good way. Thank you. Well, we have 5 more minutes. I'm gonna ask from our attendees, I'm just gonna take one question. I'll take Jacqueline's. She said, can each of you share one thing that you believe Latinas in architecture should do to raise the 1%?
Alicia, you go first.
Yeah. Go.
Go, Raquel.
Me? Well, I have a question to answer that question. Is number one, like before this panel, how many Latina architects did you all know? And you can put it in the chat. I love seeing the numbers. It's just like, I love it. And then it's kind of like, ew. But we're seeing them grow. It's to me, it's participating in these kinds of events, these panels, right? You can be a member of Architina, just join us. If you're a licensed architect, we would love to connect with you. Connect with us on LinkedIn, go to our website, which I'll add to the chat. And we would love to feature you on our website. And that continues to grow. The way the idea Architina, the idea, it was founded on the idea of lift as you climb. So as you are making your career better, improving your career, make sure that you bring somebody with you. And that's what the Architina movement is. You know, we're all, this book in Architina has exposed so much and has empowered so many Latinas to speak up, to embrace their journey, and to improve their careers, right? And the thing that they've been dreaming of. So when you get there, as you climb, make sure to bring at least one or more with you. That is my biggest message for how to increase the 1%. If you have a leadership role in your firm, make sure that you are welcoming to, you know, Latinas who may look lonely or look a little lost, because chances are they might have questions, right? Is just be that friend that I wish I had in the firms. I looked for these people and they were not around.
And I'm going to add to what Alicia just said. Join organizations like AIA, like NOMA, USGBC, whatever organization. And that's how you can start reaching out to other Latinas to join Architina or join you in your professional path. But what Alicia said is completely true. Just tell your story, speak up, connect, show your experience, and then someone will relate to that. And that's how we do that pollination.
And even sharing it at home, right? Where I mentioned nobody's an architect in my family, mostly in education are my family members, second generation. But I love every time the network grows, I show my mother, I'm like, mira, todas ellas son arquitectas, todos son arquitectos, you know. She's like, ella también, y ella también. Like she just pointed and she just feels so excited. She's like, oh my God, there's so many, you know. And it's and then it has that ripple effect.
I would add to that the mentorship. So we already mentioned Architina, so I'm going to put that there, but mentorship across all ages and levels is extremely important. Here in Chicago, I've realized I've volunteered before for middle schools. And when I go to a middle school in the South Side and I ask, who's the most famous architect, you know, they're like, you. Or do you want to be an architect? And they say, I didn't know I could. So a lot of children grow up without knowing they can be architects. So I think we should always start from as young as people as possible. If you can go to a school and start teaching them, not only Latino women, Latino men, every person that you can possibly tell, this is what architecture is. This is a path that you can take. Even it doesn't matter where you grew up, you can become an architect. And then as you are at work, mentorship, mentor your peers. I don't know if you guys, I remember watching Pay It Forward, an old movie where this kid helped 3 other people and the 3 other people had to help 3 other people. I'll never forget that, because that's how I think at work. When you mentor someone, they're going to mentor other people in return. So you're basically investing in someone's future and in the place, company's future, whatever future you are working for. So I just think mentorship is the core of everything. So wherever you can do it, just go do it.
For me, I think the thread, which is what I was going to say anyway, but the thread for me in all of this conversation today is, don't be afraid to be visible. Somebody will learn from your journey. Every story is worth being told. It's not everybody is comfortable doing it. It's trial and error. Fail in association, so you don't have to fail at work, but be visible, because somebody will love your story. Somebody will learn from your own journey, and you will be their hero. And that's the best thing that we can do. And we can do it from K through 12. We can do it in the profession. We can do it at home. But it takes us recognizing who we are, embracing our identity, all the intersections of our identity, and thinking about it as an asset, which is something that we don't typically do in the firm. You're an asset because you're at the table, because you speak a different language, because you're a woman, because you're a mother. All of those things are just as valid as being great at project management. Like that is, you relate to clients in a different way. And it's about who you are and being visible and embracing all of those things, welcoming the challenge, and just being present in the moment.
And speaking with your hands.
Oh my God, I have one tied down. It's just impossible. The other one just keeps
Put mine here underneath the screen all the time.
I'm like, I have one tied. It doesn't matter.
We do that, Latinas.
This was a wonderful experience. I, again, want to thank you for taking the time with us, and all the attendees for taking the time and being here, and keep moving forward, keep going. Never stop for nobody.
Thank you. I'm so happy that all of you are here. Each and every one of you guys are here for a reason. And it's been so incredible to meet so many Latina architects across the country. It is beyond my dreams. And it's a beautiful scene.
And we want to see more Latinas joining, and non-Latinas too. We have mentors in Architinas that are not Latinas. So you are all welcome. It's a really nice group, and I think we all have a lot to share and to help others.
Definitely. Well, I think we're gonna close up our night. We did pretty well, 7:33.
Wow.
Thank you.
That's amazing.
Yeah, we did well. We did well.
Thank you, Ebru. That was great.
Thank you.
I hope to meet you guys in person.
We just recorded the session. We're going to post it on the AIA Long Island chapter and also on the YouTube channel. So feel free to just share it with anybody else that you think maybe benefit from this conversation. And I'm sure this is not going to be the last one.
Nope, let's keep it going. That's the whole idea.
Thank you so much, ladies.
Pleasure, guys.
Have a good night, everyone.
Have a
Hope
great
to see you
night.
soon.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.